Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
We've got Blue Gold Basketball, the men's team, going to be back at it. Newly minted top 25 Blue Gold men's basketball team, undefeated to begin the season. They're going to be at home at the Sonoteg Center, taking on the University of Northwestern Minnesota. And our guest here, Rob Demovsky from ESPN, who knows a little bit about this team and such, has been following them. I mean, Rob, first of all, good morning. And, I mean, your thoughts on this Blue Gold basketball team, the job that they've done so far this year, dude.
Yeah, I've obviously got a personal tie-in. My son comes off the bench for the team, and it's been a lot of fun to watch them sort of grow here. And, I mean, they're, what are they, 8-0 and cracked the top 25 this week. I do think that, it's a really good team, but I don't know that it's been tested like it will be tested once conference play starts in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But, I mean, they've been racking up some of the points, too. I mean, this is the best start since 1999, I believe is what I read here, too. So, Coach Zach in year two doing a really good job.
Hopefully the Sonotag starts to fill up as the year goes on.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Well, hey, again, thanks for hanging out with us a little bit this morning and chatting some green and gold. So going back to that win against the Bears, obviously, all the talk with the rivalry with the coaches of Ben Johnson and Matt LaFleur and such.
Yeah.
But after the game in the locker room, obviously Packers fans were pumped and excited about it. What was the vibe like in the locker room? Was there kind of like a vibe of, we're not done yet, we still got a lot of good games or good competition left? What was kind of that vibe from the players and the coaches?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. That's a good way to put it. I mean, certainly they were, it was celebratory, but, there were a lot of guys saying, hey, we've got these guys again in 13 days, which, it's even closer than that now. And they also know that they've got a really, really hard game this week at Denver. I mean, Denver's defense is, probably as good as anybody's in the league. And, the Bears have the Browns. So, if the Packers slip up this week, you would think the Bears beat the Browns, and then we're right back in the exact same situation we were for the previous Bears-Packers game. So, the Packers don't want to let the Bears back into this thing, and, the quickest way to do that is by losing this week at Denver. So, I also think Matt LaFleur was, biting his tongue as best he could. Didn't want to say anything about Ben Johnson or anything inflammatory, but anybody who watched that post-game handshake and the quick blow-by that it was, I'm sure can get an idea of just how Matt LaFleur felt about it.
Yeah, and I loved your GIF or GIF. It's not quite the Tom Crean blow-by when you posted that out there and such. But, I mean, it obviously looked like it was something. And I don't know if you've noticed this too, but, like, even listening to Ben Johnson's pressers and such, he talks a lot about Jeff Hafley, but I don't know if he's even mentioned, like, Matt LaFleur by name in some of his pressers.
Yeah, it was interesting last week, Dan, because, like, we talked about that a lot with LaFleur, but late in the week when we got the coordinators, we asked Jeff Hafley about it, and really, like, if you think about it, Ben Johnson was the offensive coordinator in Detroit, and who's he going against? He's really going against Jeff Hafley and that Packers defense, and to say he beat Matt LaFleur twice a year, really he beat Jeff Hafley twice a year or twice last year in Detroit. So, I think Jeff took it a little bit personally too, although he did, he said the right thing, and he said, we'll let those two guys, meaning the two head coaches, battle it out on Sunday. But I mean, I think the Packers defense is playing well. Obviously, the second half, they had a stretch where they couldn't necessarily get off the field. They were letting up long drives, but the Bears had run the ball like crazy last week, and against the Packers last week, their longest run was 9 yards. Yes, they had a lot of 7, 8, 9-yard runs, but the Packers, at least contained the explosives.
Yeah. Speaking of that defense, Rob, with these Final Four, you got the Bears again, you got Denver coming up in Baltimore in a couple weeks. How big of a concern should it be for that Packers, for that interior defensive line, especially with no more Devontae Wyatt?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because they did add a couple of guys last week and big guys, like really big defensive tackles. Jordan Riley, who they signed off the Giants practice squad, I believe. He played last week, played a handful of snaps, and he's going to only get more acclimated. And then they had a waiver claim last week. from Seattle, and he wasn't active. But they did add some size to the interior of that defensive line after losing Wyatt. I mean, it's a concern. But, getting Quay Walker back last week, the inside linebacker, I mean, he's had a really good year, maybe his best year. That has helped. The guys like Isaiah McDuffie, have played much better this year than they have in the past. So I do think that, it's not ideal, but I do think they are equipped to still be able to handle it.
We saw the return of Jaden Reed last week. Packers got him active very early in that ball game, and I know this is a team. When Tucker Kraft went down, the question was, can Luke Musgrave replace Tucker Kraft? But could you make the case that maybe Jaden Reed is the guy that replaces Tucker Kraft because of the yards after catch, because of going across the middle of the field?
Yeah, and I mean, getting Christian Watson back too. I mean, Jaden Reed was out since week 2. Watson didn't play till week 8. Tucker Kraft, was out before then. Watson and Kraft never played together, I don't think, this year. If they did, it wasn't much. So clearly, at least going into last week before Reed was back, Christian Watson had sort of become the focal point of the offense, and then Reed just does so many different things. They can get him the ball, jet sweeps, and swing passes, and just get him out into space. So I do think, offensively, they're in a good spot even after losing, Tucker Kraft. And, Musgrave's not Tucker Kraft, but, he has a chance to make some downfield plays. I thought he caught the ball that got overturned by replay this past week. I'm not sure what they saw to rule that incomplete, but, I mean, it did show, even though he didn't make the play, I guess, technically, it did show some of his ability down the field.
Mm-hmm. Jordan Love, the year, I mean, I think we looked it up earlier, his odds, third best odds to win MVP this year, according to DraftKings and such. And we know he's like top 5, top 10 in a lot of categories. Go back to a couple of years ago when he was the starter and such. I think a lot of people was like, the deep ball, maybe he's got to work on the accuracy and such.
Yeah.
Has that been the biggest improvement you have seen from him, from watching him over these years? Or what else have you really noticed from him in terms of growth and improvement?
Yeah, I think I'm actually writing a story for this week on ESPN.com about his ability to get the ball down the field at a better rate. Obviously, like we talked about, having Watson back has helped, but and they've actually been more aggressive throwing the ball downfield since Watson got back. But I mean, if you just look at percentages and completion rates, like that's the area where it's just been the biggest jump. His first year on balls thrown 20 yards or more down the field, he completed 37% of them. This year, he's up to 44% of them, and those numbers are even higher just in the last couple of weeks since Watson's been back. So I mean, like that's a huge difference. And like he's got 4 touchdowns on balls thrown 20 yards or more down the field since week 8. He had 0 of them in weeks 1 through 7. His off-target percentage has dropped much lower, so he's in a good spot there. And like all the time, or a lot of times in the first couple of years, you'd hear Matt LaFleur or Love or the receivers, say, well, Jordan just put too much air under it, or he didn't put enough air under it. Well, lately they've been just right. Sounds a little bit like the Goldilocks and the 3 Bears story. Well, this one has too much air. This one doesn't have enough. This one was just right.
Yeah, no kidding. So, and speaking of the offense, Rob, I know, a couple months ago, maybe a month ago, there were some fans like, okay, the inconsistencies, what's going on with the offense and such. Did a lot of that kind of start to come together when it seemed like maybe they finally settled on an offensive line, putting Anthony Belton at the right guard? Yeah,
and Sean Ryan settling into center. Obviously they didn't want to lose Elton Jenkins, but Sean Ryan's done a really good job there. The long-term question is, what do you do with Jordan Morgan, your first-round pick from 2 years ago, who really didn't play very well at guard, and now Belton has played well. I mean, that's an off-season problem, I guess. But, yeah, they have settled in as an offensive line, and it's allowed Jordan Love just to have just a little bit more time back there to make some of those down-the-field throws.
So looking at these last 4 weeks, I mean, this NFC is just kind of all over the place. I mean, I feel like every week it's going to shuffle around, in terms of standings and such. But looking at this Denver game, with that offensive line, you've mentioned it earlier with that that defense, they can get after the quarterback and such.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at, that matchup, do you see a pretty good game? I mean, we had some people kind of chiming in like, oh, okay, well, how good is Denver, their offense?
Yeah.
But their defense looks really special.
Yeah, I mean, they're right up there in sack numbers. They're right up there in low fewest yards per game. And, I mean, they've won 10 in a row. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that doesn't happen in this league very often. And I think the second longest active winning streak right now is 5 games. I think the Texans have won 5 in a row. Nobody in the NFC has won more than 4 in a row, and that's the Packers. You just don't win 10 in a row in this league by accident. So I think that has everyone's attention. And, Sean Payton's obviously a very experienced coach, and, he's probably done he's maximized what they've gotten out of Bo Nix in the offense. It hasn't been an overly dynamic offense, but, they're doing just enough to allow that defense to really win games for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, hey, he's Rob Demovsky, ESPN.com, ESPN NFL Nation Packers reporter covering the Packers. Appreciate the time this morning, and I can't wait to meet up with you at the Sonntag sometime soon and watch the top 25 Blue Gold basketball team with you here.
Yeah, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I can get there tonight. But if not, I will definitely be there for the next home game, which I believe is right before Christmas.
Right, exactly. Well, if you do, safe travels, sir, and we appreciate the time again this morning catching up with you.
All right. You got it, Dan. Anytime, we'll be seeing you.